What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy, GS Luke, here with our Round 3 live stream for the Masters. Going to get you ready for all your moving day lineups. With any of your questions down there in the live chat, whether that's strategy-based over there on DraftKings or over there with any player deep dives, as well as a look at the weather report, some of the shots gained metrics over there from today, as well as some of the looks at some of the contests on DraftKings, as well as actually putting together a lineup or two to give you an idea of a few nuggets in your process to implement over there for the next day. So hopefully today was treating you guys nicely, whether it was on the links over there with your exposure or over there with just hanging out, finishing up the work week, that sort of thing out there, and you're ready to go out there and have ourselves a weekend. You've got an absolutely stacked leaderboard. You've got Scotty, Bryson, also Rory. You got back into contention, and also a host of a few guys up there that a few coming back, like Sunjay, we haven't seen for a while, and then my guy Matt McCarty, my sleeper play this week, up there at -5-2. A good little mix towards the top end of the board, but with moving day, especially at these major championships, normally that cream starts to rise to the top. So I am eagerly excited to see what's going to happen. So we'll go through any of those questions that you've got. I see we got a few of you already down there in the chat. Go Collect is always first down there, which is impeccable, the consistency that he has. Welcome on in. We got Sean down there as well. 14% 6-6 is pretty sweet. So you said you had a rough day today. Hey, we got rounds 3 and 4 showdown to make that up, and that's not a bad spot there with 14%. Nick is on time this time. We got Jake hyping up McCarty for me. I appreciate you down there. I got Ross down there too. Hate to hear that, Desmond, but hopefully you have a bounce back this weekend. We got Jen down there. Alan as well says, thank you. You're the GOAT. Hey, I appreciate the kind words. I don't know if I'm quite the GOAT, but hey, if you think so, I guess I appreciate that. I think Hope Yob says, they got you, Luke. Bobby Mack got you. Yeah, man, a few chalky guys missed the cut this week. Henley's going to be one of them. I played Henley this week. I didn't play Bobby Mack, but everyone's probably going to have at least one guy like that they're really pissed off that they played. And hey, it wasn't even just one guy for me. Sergio Garcia is a main one too. Feel free to go ahead and vent down there in the chat. What's going on, Brian? You got the showdown win there. Yeah, I saw you on the Discord channel mentioning that good stuff yourself. Willie Z, yeah, look, that's another one, right? That probably got a lot of people. He had some ownership out there. We got Ed here on time. Look at that. We got Nick on time. I haven't seen Desmond in here for a while. And I've got to say, Desmond, right? If it wasn't your luck today, maybe being here live for once will change that for you. Getting some good vibes going, that sort of thing. And the way Henley missed the cut was so tilting. He did have a good showdown day, though, so at least I played him for showdown. Same thing with Straka, right? He had a really tilting 18th hole with going out there and missing the cut, but they made enough birdies for showdown to get there. So not all was lost on those sort of players, at least for me. I took the shot on those kind of guys. Keegan and Willie Z gotcha. Yeah, Willie Z seems to be a common denominator for a few of you guys. I guess it could have been worse. Koepka and Straka was brutal. Yeah, I didn't have Straka for main slate. Kind of happy he missed the cut, but glad that he played well for showdown. Koepka, man, he gave up. The tee shot was terrible. The around the green was even worse there on 18. Dude, I don't know what it was about that hole, but a few people just crumbled under that pressure. What's going on, Michael? This cut line killed you in general. I don't know if you play golf every week, but dude, the cut line is one of the best sweats that we have out there. So sometimes it kills you, sometimes it helps you out. Either way, it is always a lot of fun. I know that much. Let's talk about this golf course. So morning played easier than the afternoon. We thought it would be that way, but maybe not quite a whole 0.7 shot difference. I thought maybe about a 0.5 shot difference. So it wasn't like drastically off from what I thought was going to happen. I did take some of my exposure and kind of lean it towards those AM players. It's not like we had waves, so it's not like you could really stack out there fully. But with breaking some ties, it might have been a good idea to go out there and take those morning starters. And because it is going to be two sums off of hole 1 tomorrow, there's only, I believe, like 53 guys that are going to be making it to the weekend. There's going to be quite a large spread from the first to last tee time. So when we take a look at this weather forecast for tomorrow, there is an opportunity for a quote-unquote weather edge, but unfortunately, the weather is not going to cooperate. The weather looks very calm the entire day. You're talking about maxing out about 9 miles an hour sustained winds. In the morning, it is slightly lower out there from the sustained wind perspective, but the wind gusts only go up like from 8 to about 12 miles an hour in the afternoon, and the temperatures are lower in the morning. In fact, compared to the first few days here on this HRRR, it's down there at 47 degrees Fahrenheit. And day 1, it was closer to like 50. Day 2, I believe it was like 52 degrees when the day started. So even your early guys that could have a little bit of calmer conditions, and I'll really stress that a little bit part because you're being nitpicky, talking talking about a 3 miles an hour sustained difference there, but they're also going to have the cooler temperatures. So I would say that it really doesn't matter when you're going to be teeing off for tomorrow. And heck, I think when we look at the averages out there before round number 4, that it's probably going to look like the PM wave was the side that played easier. Now, the reason for that isn't going to be conditions, at least in my opinion. It's likely going to be because the best players are towards the top. I mean, you've got your Brysons, your Rorys, your Scotties up there, all of your guys that are in form in the top 10, top 20. And because this is such a weak field, this is a field with Champions Tour guys towards the bottom, amateurs that had no business of making it to the weekend. This top 50, which was only 50% of this field, is even weaker than usual. So like guys like Tom Kim, Jordan Spieth that are going to make it on the number out there, JJ Spawn, Poston, etc., would mostly be missing the cut out here in PGA Tour starts. So, they luck out a little bit with the kind of format that you have out here for the Masters. So the fact that they're going off early makes them pretty sketchy plays, in my opinion, right? Like you're going to have slightly worse scoring from those kind of guys in general. They're going to be more aggressive players, which is going to actually be a good thing out there from the showdown perspective. But at the same time, you also don't want to just stack all guys going off later, even though they are the informed players, because they're going to have higher ownership. So that's why I said you have to kind of find a fine balance in your lineups. You're not really going to stack them out there towards one side or the other, because you're going to need some early guys for that leverage to get you some of those lower owned plays. And then the mid to later guys, the guys that are in form up there in the top 20, are going to be a lot of your conviction plays that you're likely taking with a little bit of ownership. So I think having like a good mix, whether it's a 3-3, right? 3 chalky guys, 3 guys that are a little bit lower owned, that are going off a little bit earlier, would be a really good way to approach this kind of slate. So when we get to the shots gained metrics here in a minute, when we're looking at these shots gained metrics, you can use them for your conviction plays, especially with the ball striking. But when you're trying to find some of your lower owned guys there towards the bottom end of the board, course history might be a good idea to look at, because those guys like Tom Kim, Jordan Spieth, etc., their shots gained metrics are not going to look very good over there at +2. So if you're going to get to those kind of plays, you might have to be more creative about trying to mix them into your pool. And if you aren't creative about it, right, you're only looking at the shots gained, you're going to have too much chalk over there in your player pool. So that's why having a few extra things to go out there and use as things to look for, whether it's that, you could talk about high upside birdie makers, par 5 scores. That's something that I look for out there in my process to go out there and round out your lineups. So what we're going to look at first over here with the round 2 stats would be your shots gained ball striking. And just like I mentioned yesterday, these are players that you want to give a boost out there in your process. You guys remember Matt McCarty was a player that was gaining out there from tee to green, but that was losing over there with the putter. And today was his nuclear round. Hideki Matsuyama is setting up the same way. You can see gained nearly 6 strokes ball striking, including over 4 strokes over there on approach, but lost about 2 strokes with the putter. Michael Kim is a very, maybe not as good of a player from tee to green, but is setting up pretty similar from the stat perspective, losing over 2 strokes in the putter, but gaining, you can see over 3 strokes over there with his ball striking. So these kind of players are players that I'm going to prioritize over there in my process, because not only are they ball striking poppers, which I'm actively looking for, but because they lost nearly 2 strokes or over 2 strokes, with the case of Michael Kim, strokes over there on the greens, they're due for a little bit of regression in that category, especially Hideki Matsuyama, who tends to putt the greens here at Augusta National particularly well. Michael Kim, not nearly as experienced, so maybe he regresses back to like a neutral round, that sort of thing. But if Hideki goes from losing nearly 2 strokes to gaining 2 strokes in that category, he goes from shooting -4 to a -8 round. That's how well he hit it out there from tee to green, and that's why he's the kind of guy that I'll throw into my showdown lineups, because he has that nuclear ceiling out there, right? Like a Matt McCarty today, he started off, I believe, like 2 or 3 over par early. It was rough through his first few holes, but he posted such a good fantasy score out there because he made 8 birdies. He was throwing darts out there. He had that flat stick working, which wasn't cooperating out there from round number 1. And the other side isn't just the ball striking, it's the short game regression. That's the other thing I like to look for out there in the shots gained metrics. Aren't just guys that are towards the top end of this ball striking board that are also due to go out there and have a better short game day. So that's why I was pointing out guys like Matsuyama, Kim in particular, but even a Terrell Hatton over here, who, by the way, he mostly is losing strokes because he had 2 3-putts towards the end of his round. So maybe not the best example of that. Like guys like Kim, Hideki Matsuyama, it was more of like bleeding strokes throughout the entire round. But guys like Adam Scott, unfortunately, he's missing the cut. But if he had made the cut, he would have been a candidate to go out there and play for tomorrow. But a Sam Burns kind of comes to mind here. He didn't actually make very many putts today, but from tee to green was green across all three categories. These are the sort of players that I'm really boosting in my process. So we sorted it by ball striking to start, but you can just look at off the tee on its own as well, and then try and find some short game poppers. You can look at approach play on its own and do that same sort of exercise. And then with these short game categories, I try and look at the top end of the list to kind of warn myself against playing some of these guys. So Erasmus Højgaard, they gained nearly 4 strokes putting. Matt McCarty, great that he went out there and nuked today out there with my lineups, but I'm not going to count on him gaining nearly 4 strokes putting again. And in fact, those guys here towards the top end of the board, Max Homa will throw in there as well. His tee to green was kind of shaky, but he gained nearly 3 strokes of the putter. I would be actively fading over there in my lineup. So these sort of guys, you won't see me going out there and playing. Like a JT Poston, you won't see him over there in my player pool. It's not like he can't get there. He for sure could. You see some crazy stuff over there in golf. But when a guy's gaining strokes putting, but losing over there in the ball striking categories, I have a really hard time thinking that that's going to be sustainable out there the entire weekend. So that's what I do over there with a lot of those sort of players. Around the green, you can look at it the same way. So these guys that gained like 3 strokes chipping, first off, that means they were missing a ton of greens, or it means they chipped in multiple times out there for birdies, eagles, whatever the case may be. This is also very hard to keep up out there from round to round. So guys like a Patrick Reed, Bryson DeChambeau, Justin Thomas, Matty Fitz, Tommy Fleetwood, all going to get a slight little boost down there, right? A little bit of a I can't think of the right penalty, I guess would be the word I'm looking for. But it doesn't mean they're unplayable, right? Just because somebody gains strokes putting or gains strokes around the green does not mean that I'm completely eliminating them. It does mean, though, that they're probably going to have to be a little bit lower owned. Like, I don't want a piece of chalk that was doing it all with the short game, and that they're going to have something with the ball striking. Now, if they had good ball striking and they gained over there in one of those 2 short game categories, they're probably chalk for the next day. So there's not going to be that many examples of those kind of players that I'm usually going to be getting to. But like, if you can find a sleeper, like Akshay Bhatia would be one of these guys. Like, sure, he lost a whole bunch of the ball striking today. That's a tough scene out there, but no one's going to use him at +2. I mean, you're talking 10% or less ownership out there. I don't know if he's top into the 7s or lower in the 8K range. But either way, very low owned for that portion of the board. You can make exceptions to the rule, especially when it's only like 1.8 strokes that he was gaining there around the green. But these guys that were gaining like 2.5, 3 strokes, it's a little bit harder to get past that as well. So that's how I use these categories. And the flip side is also true. So guys that lost a bunch of strokes in these categories, a bunch of them are going to miss the cut, like you see there with those top 3. But a JJ Spawn here that lost about 2 strokes around the green, maybe he has a better day tomorrow. Now, he did have a decent putting day, but it wasn't like he had a spike around there. So it's not like you give a massive impact out there with these sort of things, but they can help you build a player pool. You know, if you're looking for some sleeper plays there in that 6 and 7K range, especially like for those 6K guys down there towards the bottom end of the board, if you're just trying to find somebody to go out there and punt on, it can give you a rhyme and reason for going out there and playing people. And you've probably heard this before if you've watched my Showdown content, but I always say have some sort of reason for every single play that you're getting to. And it doesn't have to be the same sort of reasons that I look for in my exposure, but you should have some sort of idea why you're on a certain guy. For example, for me, it can be ball striking form, short game regression, like we talked about, course history, high upside players, like I was mentioning earlier as well. But you can add on top of that, right, with whatever you like in your process. And, you know, round 3 historical, that's something that you have over there on the SHIPIT Nation Stone. You can look at some true approach stats as well. That's something that they break down that makes things really easy for seeing who is the most consistent iron players out there in the field. A bunch of other stuff on top of that you can look at as well. So no one should have the same process. You should always be adding on top of it, subtracting things that you don't agree with out there and making it your own. Just have a process for building your player pool. That is the only thing that I think that you have to do, right? Certain stats, you should have that creative freedom to go out there and adjust that. You should just need a process for it, right? Picking names out of a hat is not going to be a long-term winning strategy. So let me go ahead, adjust this back to the score tab, and let's catch up on any questions that you guys have in the chat. So where did we leave off? So I believe it was closer to this portion of the board here. Bradley killed your lineups at 6 of 6s. Yeah, he's also a common denominator with guys. Unfortunate, but hey, you got Showdown the next few days. McCarty was the nuts. Thanks for helping you win $3,500. You won more than I did on Showdown today. I had a decent investment too, so it was a good day, not a great day. Seems like it was pretty great out there for you. So yeah, if I'm not going to win, I just want it to be a viewer of the content and somebody that we can celebrate with together. So good stuff, Dr. Lucky 7, and try and run it back tomorrow. Appreciate that, Brian. For the contest selection of the show, would I rather play the $100 single entry with 400 people or the one with 111 people? So I'd rather have the bigger one. So about 400 people. Payout structures are going to be kind of similar across both contests. And, if you have a top 10 lineup, top 20 lineup out there in other contests, you're going to get a pretty decent payout either way, like especially the $400 one. But if you win the $400 one, you're also going to get a bigger payout too. So I'd go with that. In smaller field contests, am I playing more chalk? In a 300 man, for example, you don't need as much leverage. That is 100% true. I think we've mentioned that a few times. You said you joined the Patreon to support. I appreciate that. Tony G helps me with all the content that I'm doing and doing this for you guys. So appreciate all of that. And so what you're saying there is exactly correct. Like if you're in a smaller contest, you can play more chalk. It doesn't mean I'm forcing it in though. So it's not like I'm in those smaller contests going like, okay, I have to add somebody that's 25% there. But when I'm building those sort of lineups and I'm looking at my top projected plays, if some of them have some ownership, I can sneak in an extra one or two out there into my build. So that idea is true, just maybe slightly different with how I actually look at it. Can I deep dive Burger? So yes, I can. So our first player deep dive, which by the way, now is the time for that. If you guys have any of those that you want me to go through, Daniel Berger in round number 2 lost around the green and gained in the other 3 categories. Nothing really stood out. Nothing was over a half a stroke in any of those 3 categories. But this is the kind of stat profile where it doesn't really tell us all that much, other than the fact that he's playing decent enough golf to be in consideration for tomorrow. And because he's at T27, that is the middle of the board for guys that made the cut here, he's not going to be overly popular. You're probably, I believe in my ownership projections, which I haven't posted my projections on my Patreon page quite yet, but after we get off live stream here, I'll probably have them done like 10, 15 minutes afterwards. I have most of them kind of finalized. Burger though, I'll actually just look on the other tab. I have it pulled up over here. I've got at just a little bit over 10% ownership. So maybe not as low owned as what you'd want at that portion of the board. And the reason for that, and it's kind of strange what we have going on for tomorrow, is Jason Day is $7,800. And then everyone from $7,700 and $7,600 all missed the cut. In fact, only one guy at 7,500 made it, and that was Patrick Reed, who's also going to be getting quite a bit of ownership. But because there's a massive gap there from 7,800 the whole way down to 7,500, I think that those guys, so that's a Patrick Reed, a Daniel Berger, who's at 7,400, and then even like residual effects from this are going to affect guys like Harris English, Sanjay Im there at $7,300. I think that they're going to be a little bit higher owned than they otherwise would be because people like to spend all of their salary, right? And if there's a $300 gap there, the guys below that are going to get peppered a little bit more than like even Terrell Hatton and Jason Day that are towards the expensive end of that. Right? They're the 2 guys that are above that $300 gap. I also think that they're probably going to get steamed up a little bit. So in my projections, for example, I've got Hatton over 16% owned. I've got Jason Day at nearly 14% ownership, which for a 7K range golfer, I know it's top end of the 7K range, but still for a 7K range golfer is chalkier than normal out there for the showdown slate. So Berger, good play, but having an unfortunate side effect of extra ownership because of all the guys that missed the cut around him. Burns gained strokes on approach and lost putting. Yeah, I'm hoping he found some of them with the irons, man. And I bet against him for props today, so I was tracking him rather closely. I was anti-sweating him, so him hitting the ball to 5-10 feet every single hole just was the nail in the coffin. He never had a chance to go over on his strokes. So that's why I know he's a good play for tomorrow, because if he had any semblance of a putter, I'm talking even if he putted like Lukey Gloves out there today, he shoots something like -4, probably -5. The guy was putting like Stevie Wonder out there. Could not read the greens or something like that. And he's normally one of the best putters out there. So I wouldn't expect that to last very long. The Burns deep dive, he's a really good play, I would say. You love Jason Day tomorrow, almost 2 bogey-free rounds. Yeah, he gave it up towards the end, I guess. Out there on hole number 18. He's hitting the ball well across the board. In fact, only lost off the tee today. Round number 1, he gained in every category but the flat stick. So, you look at it as a whole, he's gaining in every category but off the tee. Yeah, nothing bad you can say about Jason Day's game. And, he hasn't done anything overly great here other than his runner-up finish to, I think it might have been Bubba Watson that he was runner-up to. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but either way, he's a good course fit. I think he should have had better success around here over the years. Probably should have won this event back in his prime. You need Decky in yellow, but he wears green tomorrow. Yeah, it's yellow on Sunday, so you might have to wait for him one more day for that. Do we get Bryson, Rory, and Chef Hannon for pairings tomorrow? So let me look at the leaderboard. I'm not sure on that. So who was the first one you said? So you're looking at Bryson, Rory. No, we're not going to get Bryson, Rory because it's going to be Rose DeChambeau up there towards the top. And then the other one you're wondering about was Chef and Hen. That one I think is more realistic. So it's these two, and then Scheffler and Hen. They're going to end up getting paired up. So we get that one. I'm not sure if that one's going to be that crazy. Hen's going to be fun to watch. They're going to have cameras on Scheffler the whole time. So we're going to get the Hen show, maybe a few hot mic moments out there for round number 3. But yeah, unfortunately, no Bryson, Rory. Maybe for Sunday, we can get that dream pairing out there. Did I see Cam Young free putt from a foot? I didn't, but that's funny as heck. I'll have to check out the live video a little bit later on. What's going on, Houday? Been a longtime follower from afar. How differently do I build in small contests versus my lottery teams? And by the way, I appreciate you for joining over there on the Patreon. So my small contests versus my lottery teams, I normally prioritize projection a little bit more in my smaller field stuff. It's not quite to the extent of cash where you don't want to be too far off of the optimal cash lineup out there in your builds. I get a lot different from the optimal build, but my core plays, guys that I bet outright, that I have some conviction behind, almost always make my single entry build. So it's not a massive mindset change other than the fact that forcing in leverage, forcing in guys that are sub 5% owned isn't as much of a priority for me. So that's how I kind of change it up. Not trying to over leverage yourself, typically play the 3 to 4 max. Yeah, so that sort of idea kind of holds then. You just don't want to over play the leverage game. You're not forcing in guys that are sub 5%. If there's somebody you really like that is sub 5% owned, then by all means, use them in your lineup. But you also don't have to worry about it if they're 15% owned. You can get away with that in most cases. Cam Smith, you were super overweight on him. Me too, actually, Jordan. So I feel you're paying over there with Cam Smith. You were looking at some 30% Benny Ann. Yeah, man, I played Benny Ann this week too. I didn't go 30% or anything. You're an absolute madman playing them in a third of your lineups, but it worked out, especially with that birdie down the stretch. So good stuff there. Phil got his nuts kicked in today. Unfortunate to hear that, Phil, but hopefully you have a better round 3, I guess. I got to say, it's kicking the nuts for a reason, man. So I guess you know the deal, right? We got Ross over here says, is Rahm trending? Did he manage to go bogey free? He did. He had a decent, under the radar sort of round. And if you take a look at the shots gained metrics, it was a little bit around the green heavy. So this is not the kind of stat profile that I would say means that he's trending. He just kept it together, right, somehow. I mean, it was, if you look at his actual hole by hole record, it was a lot of short-sided chips that he was hitting to 5-6 feet. And the losing with the putter kind of surprises me, I would say, because he had a lot of really good saves out there in that category today, but I guess he had a lot of birdie putts that he wasn't making as well. So I think that he's a good bounce back candidate because he's there at T40 and he's not going to carry nearly as much ownership as any of the other spend up options in that 9-10K range. Thoughts on Wyndham Clark? So he's one of those guys in the middle end of the 7Ks that I think might get some steam, or I guess he's lower end of the 7s at $7,100. In terms of projection, he's the best play on the slate. I shouldn't say on the slate. That is incorrect. The best play on that portion of the the pricing is what I was looking for there. I've got him projected for 5-6 points higher than a Matt Fitzpatrick. I've got him projected for 4 or 5 points higher than Aaron Rye. Now, projection leads to ownership though, and I'm not the only projection source out there. So maybe some other sources aren't going to be as high at Wyndham Clark, but based on his price relationship, and there's actually a few guys that kind of fit that. Wyndham Clark is one of them, right? $7,100 is way too cheap. But there's a few others like Sam Burns is $6,500. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the price on him, but that is ridiculous. Tom Kim is $6,600. Nicholas Echeverria is $6,400. Guys that are just way cheaper than they probably should be. That I'll be playing out there in my lineups, right? Even if they don't look the best with the shots gained metrics. And to show you the shots gained metrics over here in Wyndham Clark, they're not the best. Today, you can see he was kind of neutral across the board. Sorry, that's for the entire event. Round number 2, he was into the positive, but mostly with those 2 short game categories. And then in round number 1, you can see he lost over there across the board. So that's why the shots gained metrics are so close to neutral. And yeah, I don't think he's a terrible play because he's a high birdie percentage player. He's a good par 5 scorer, but I've got him a little bit over 10% owned. So the projection, putting some steam over there on him, unfortunately, which makes him a better play for like single entries. Kind of going to that question that we had about lineup construction, like Wyndham Clark would be like a jam spot for me over there in single entry lineups because he's the best projection in that portion of the board. He's 10% owned. Single entries maybe 15% owned because people are also jamming in projection. But it's not the end of the world having a 15% owned player in a 400-person contest. They've got 5 other spots to get that leverage out there. Where we leave off, we have, I believe this one. What did I think of Brooks quadruple on 18? That was brutal. Yeah, man, a lot of people kind of sold towards the end today. It was, I think, a brutal ending, just stretch to this golf course, just hard in general. And then when you add on the fact that it's a major championship and you have the cut on the line, weird stuff is going to happen. So I'm not that surprised by it. It happens every year over here at the Masters. The key, or I guess the thing you're hoping for, is that you don't have a lot of guys that go out there and do that. And, I was able to dodge the Straka one, not able to dodge the Brooks Koepka one, but Brooks a lot lower owned than Straka. So I'll take a whole bunch of lineups getting killed by Straka over me having like a low owned guy missing the cut, right? So there was a bunch of that today, right? It wasn't even just those 2. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but like Phil Mickelson too. I mean, that guy was +1 heading into 15. He had like a 50-yard chip to try and get up and down for birdie to maybe even get to even par with 3 holes left and plunks it in the water. Like, it's just, that's Augusta National for you, man. And that's why we love the golf course. That's why it's something that we look forward to every single year. Not every course is going to give you that sort of variance. Like some guys, when you get to like -5, that kind of thing, they're not going to go back to even par. They're not going to choke and miss the cut, right? They're not going to go from like -8 like Justin Rose is right now to maybe not even finishing in the top 10 by the end of the week. This is a golf course that's different for that reason, and I love it. Most popular play, let me look at my projections, but it's Scotty, I believe. Yeah, it's Scotty, so not a very interesting answer, but yeah, the guy at the top end of the pricing. What is Cantlay looking like? He's looking like his boring old self. If you take a look at the shots gained metrics here, if we go to round number 2, he gained on approach and gained putting, which those are the best 2 categories to gain in, I guess. But it's nothing crazy. I don't know. He's just his boring old self, man. He's like a 6 out of 10. If you like him, you like the slightly lower ownership, which the one thing I will say about Cantlay is that because he's his boring old self, he hasn't really done anything substantial this week. Right? Corey Connors is right below him in the pricing, and I've got him close to 20%. Even guys like Hideki, Xander Schauffele will probably get more attention than Patrick Cantlay. He's I don't want to call him low owned because he's still over 10%, but he's lower owned than the guys around him. Does Xander nuke tomorrow? I wish I knew, Michael. I do not have a crystal ball, or else I would tell you the answer ahead of time. But I will tell you that the shots gained metrics looked really good with his iron play, and he lost over there with the flat stick. So I would say that he sets up better than most players, but who knows, man? I hope he does, because I'll be using him in a few lineups. Rahm almost had a birdie-free round. He did, but he broke that and kept the bogey-free round going. Long way to go for Rory, and Bryson and Aubert for outrights. So you went chalk crazy out there, Brian. Well, I hope you hit one of those, because if you don't hit one of those, you're going to be out quite a bit of money betting 3 favorites like that. So that's not something I typically do, but it's good to have guys in contention. That's for damn sure. Do we just have to play JT all weekend who will nuke one day? He probably will nuke one day, but I don't know if I'm going to have the courage to play him all 4 days. We'll have to see if I do for tomorrow. Bobby Mack is a loser. I don't know if I agree with that, but yeah, he probably burned a few lineups for you. I think he's a champ for making guys not have 6 of 6s, but I guess it depends on your perspective on whether you played him or not. Thoughts on Nick Taylor? So he's kind of one of those like under the radar guys that just hardly made the cut. So if you're looking for some leverage, he will give you that. In round number 2, 6 out of 10 stat profile. Like, he gained to the field. That's great. At least he didn't go out there and lose 2-3 strokes to the field. But the approach play was about a half a stroke into the positive. That doesn't mean all that much to me. He lost off the tee, and then the putter was also about a neutral. If you're going to jam him into a lineup, it's because he's going to be about 10% ownership at the very most. If not, and I'll double check my projections, and these are my rough draft projections, so obviously I may end up adjusting these by the time I end up publishing them over there on my site. But yeah, I've got him at actually sub 5% ownership right now. So yeah, I guess the reasoning for playing him would mostly have to be for game theory, because the stat profile, it's not telling us much in either direction. Yeah, Brooks Koepka is dead to this guy in chat. Yeah, a lot of people that are mad at players. I got to say, you guys got to blame yourselves at some point too, right? Like, you played Bobby Mack, you played Brooks Koepka this week. Like, I'm not mad at Brooks. I played him. He missed the cut for me. I'm mad at myself, right? I played a loser out there at the Masters. So I know we like to tilt. I shouldn't tell people to do, but that's how I look at it, at least. Henley says, Henley was so close, bogeyed 18 to miss the cut as well. Yeah, the one thing I'll say about Straka was the other one here. You had that implosion on 18. I did have a few buddies that bet him to make the cut, last night. So he was like plus 550 or something like that to make the cut. And I think Henley was like plus 700 to go out there and make the cut. I feel bad for those people because those bets were absolute money. Like, the fact that they went to 7-1 odds to go out there and make the cut after just one bad round was just a mistake from the sports book. So I feel bad for that reason, mostly, that those guys killed it, because those kind of bets, sticking it to the books on those would have been real nice. That Straka ending was brutal. I agree with you there. DJ, yeah, let's look at DJ. So, well, he missed the cut. So yeah, we don't need to look at him. Do I have a good 6 of 6? Yeah, I have a bunch of 6 of 6s videos, so we'll have to see how they shake out. But there's a relatively high 6 of 6 rate this week, so that doesn't really mean all that much. You've got to get guys in that top 5, top 10, which is what I've got to have happen over the weekend. So we'll see how it works out. Scotty shooting 71 messed up your 4-man parlay. I'm assuming that means he took like his under or something like that. Unfortunate Ali. It's a 4-leg parlay, so hopefully you get him out there next time. You played 18% Glover. How dumb are you? Only as dumb as me, who played, let me see. Oh, I have the wrong spreadsheet up to see my actual exposures. Not as dumb as somebody that played 30%. I can't even think of it off the top of my head. I'm so good at repressing all these bad players out of my memory. I'm the best at doing that, by the way. At just completely not getting mad at players. I guess that's why I'm so good, right? At just not getting mad at these guys. I just flush it down the toilet as fast as humanly possible. Let's go down to the bottom. I guess we don't have to look at the bottom. Let's look at like the 7K range and find my donkey chalk. Oh, Sergio Garcia. Can't believe I already forgot about that donkey dick who went out there and missed the cut in like 25% of my lineups. Yeah, you're not as much as an idiot as somebody that played 25% Garcia. So don't beat yourself up about that one, my man. Is Jon Rahm broken? No. He made the cut, and on the Live Tour, he's finished top 10 in his last 7 starts. He is obviously not broken. Hey, what am I drinking this evening? Nothing, Ali. It is early, and I'm still doing my work. You get more mad at yourself than the players. Yeah, same thing, dude. Like, people can tilt. I was going to go on a rant there. I'm not going to. I used to, like, not understand the people that tilt, but I kind of do. Like, in the moment, you're like, wow, what an idiot, right? He went out there and did it. But I'm very quick to shift the blame back onto myself. Just to go, you know what? I'm the person that played them in lineups. They had no obligation for that sort of responsibility. Move on from it rather quickly. So let's go through some lineup construction over here on this side. So first off, the lineups, their contests, I should say, actually, are pretty good over here for round 3. In fact, they're bigger than what we had for yesterday. So for example, the Sand Trap is a 400K contest. It's still too top heavy for me to really like it, but because it's a little bit bigger in terms of your actual prize pool, it's slightly less top heavy than yesterday. So it was like 30% the first, I believe, or even like 33%. Now it's 25%, which makes it a little bit more doable. I believe the $250 4 max is the exact same. It's also a fourth the first place. So it's a relatively large GPP. It's not that many entries, which I think makes it kind of nice. You can see over there just under 400 total entries. So like, I know we had the question about like the smaller field GPPs. These are the kind of contests where if you like a piece of chalk in that 6 and 7K range, you can get away with doing that. And I do have some of my player pool kind of figured out already. And like Burns, I told you guys Burns, great price tag at $6,500. He's going to be chalk because of that, right? You're not going to be the only one that sees him there at $6,500, right? Let's not kid ourselves out there. If you want to use a Sam Burns at over 10% ownership, or a Terrell Hatton, who, by the way, Terrell's stat profile looks great over there for tomorrow. Those kind of guys that are over 15% there in that 7K range are best used in a contest like this $250 4 max. So if your player pool, when you're going through and putting it together, has some of those players, In mine, as of right now, I have a lot of those kind of players that I like for tomorrow. I'm probably going to enter more single entries and more of like this $250 4 max to try and account for that kind of exposure. So this is the bigger $100 single entry that you have. This is the 444 that we had the question about before. This is definitely a contest that I'll be entering for tomorrow. You also have some of like the smaller single entries, like this $33, your $12 albatross that you can enter. And what I'm looking for is the $10 18 max, because that's one of the best contests that we can enter there. And is this that? Yeah, this is the $10 18 max right there. And it's actually double the size of what we had for rounds 1 and 2. So just like some of the other GPPs, this one's actually even bigger than some of those other contests. So they're giving us even more sustainable contests to go out there and enter. And I think the big reason for that, guys, and this is, I guess, a lesson to everyone else out there, is that if we enter these contests early and often, reserve them right off the bat, let it be known to DraftKings that we like payout structures like what we have right here. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to up the size of them like what they did over here in this case, and they're going to post more of those style of contests. So if you guys want to get better payout structures out there in general, then fill up these contests as fast as humanly possible. In fact, after we get off here, I'm going to go out there and fill up my DraftKings account and then reserve my entries out there in that sort of contest. I'm going to reserve that big $100 single entry, and I might even reserve at least one, maybe two lineups in that $250 contest, because I don't hate that 400 entry sort of GPP. So the contest selection is rather nice, I would say, even compared to what we had to start the week, and obviously nice compared to what we had for the last few weeks on tour. Like for your regular tour stops, you're not getting anything close to this over there for all those kind of slates. And I do want to look at the Drive the Green. So the Drive the Green, it has a slightly higher first place payout. In second place, even at $5,000. That's what they were doing as the first place payout out there for a lot of these different slates. That's a fourth in the entire payout over there, out there to your top two spots. So that is a little bit more top heavy than what I normally like, especially in this $5 Drive the Green, which is typically the best GPP that we have in terms of payout structure. So that's why I'm going to be looking at some of those like smaller field contests, especially because I'm looking at some chalk over there in my player pool, and because they have some pretty good contests posted for the next day. So in terms of actually putting together lineups, and we're not quite to Sunday where we have to worry about placement points. As of right now, we more so have to focus on just making sure that we have enough leverage, which, like I was just saying over here on this other tab, kind of depends on the contest that you're entering. So what we're going to do for the sake of this is we're going to start off with a large field GPP build, and I can show you how that would kind of morph if we were thinking more in a single entry or a smaller field GPP instead. So again, starting with the GPP sort of build, if we're entering in that big $5, big $25 GPP, especially now that they've upped the size here over the weekend, we've really got to start to think about beating the rest of our competition. So up top, while it might be nice to play a Scotty or a Rory, both of them are going to be over 25% owned. So if you're looking at somebody like an Aubert, a Bryson, maybe even a John Rahm as a potential pivot play, then this would be the kind of spot where you might want to consider that. So to start off this kind of lineup, I'm going to throw in, let's start with the Justin Thomas. So like kind of a pivot, but kind of not a pivot. He is a little bit cheaper than normally where I'd start a lineup, but it is going to give us a little bit of extra salary flexibility. So as our next man in, let's throw in Xander Schauffele, who has those really good approach stats like we were looking at over there before. And then let's also throw in, and even though these guys aren't the quote unquote chalk towards the top end of the board, they still have some ownership behind them. So even though we're not taking the guys that are going to be the highest owned on the slate, we're still going to have to differentiate towards the bottom. So let's start with those two, and then one more 8K guy. I was thinking about Minwoo there, but maybe we'll do that as like the fourth man in or something like that. We have a little bit more salary that we can spend here. I guess a Cantlay would be in play, maybe at like $8,800. So if we started JT, Xander, Cantlay in the large field GPP, those would be really good starting pieces, because if they hit, you are getting some leverage versus the rest of the field. But those three players alone aren't enough leverage for you to just jam in like 10% guys towards the bottom. So like a Burnsy, some of those other guys in the 7K range, like Terrell Hatton, that you might want to play at like 15%. If you're in like the $5 or $25, you're not going to get away with that kind of thing. So what I would personally be doing with these last three spots is this is where I'd be really looking to some of those early guys. And it's not conditions based. I already mentioned, I think it's going to be pretty flat across the board. In fact, PM guys might actually play to a lower scoring average, but like an Akshay Bhatia would be a player that I'd be looking to jam at that spot. Keegan Bradley, even Daniel Berger over here at even par, that he's not going to be low owned, but he's not somebody that is overly popular like a Sun GM for tomorrow. And then your last man in, as long as this sort of player's like under 7% ownership, you'd be okay over there in that $5 and $25 GPP. We already started to make pivots right off the bat, right? We didn't play those 25 percenters towards the top. But if we were in a single entry, one of those smaller GPPs like I was mentioning before, you could afford to go up here and maybe start with a Rory McIlroy instead. So you're going to have to make it work with the salary. So we're going to have to move around a few of these other players. But let's go Rory, Xander as our second man in. So let's keep him in there with the approach stats that we had there before. And then for our last two spots, we have $7,000 remaining out there per player. So we've got Rory as some chalk. We've got Xander at some ownership. Let's actually just take out all these guys down low, because in this sort of contest, you can take on a lot more ownership. So a Terrell Henn, a Sam Burns, who I already told you I love as a play, but he's going to be over that 10% mark. You throw into these sort of GPPs. And, up here at the top end of the 8K range, right, I don't hate an Akshay Bhatia, but I think that Minwoo Lee is a slightly better play. So rather than forcing in the Bhatia, that is the lower owned option, and even as your last man in here, if you wanted to play Brian Harman, he's one of the more popular players. And I know we had the question about Wyndham Clark earlier before, right? He's like the best projecting player in that portion of the board. I obviously know who I would round off this kind of lineup with, right? It would be Wyndham Clark because of that sort of projection. That's the mindset change out there between single entry, some of those smaller field GPPs, and then that large field GPP that we were going out beforehand. So it's just the different mindset beating 10,000 entries as opposed to 500 or less. And you should be changing up what you should be thinking about when you're building your lineups as well. So let me catch up on any last second questions that you guys have. If we don't have any, go ahead and smash that like button before you guys hop on out of here. And also subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. And of course, we'll include our round 4 live stream over here on the SHIPIT Nation channel. But also make sure to check out my YouTube channel a little bit later on tonight over there for the prop and betting preview. Over there, we'll be going through underdog and prize picks props, 3-balls, matchups over there on the sportsbook side. And that is on my YouTube channel, LukeDFS. So whether it's over here on YouTube, you can find that if you just search on the search bar, or over there on Twitter/X, you can find me at LukeDFS as well. I'll be putting out a tweet when we're going live for that. So let me see if there's anything we need to go through together. But if not, like I said, best of luck with everything that you guys are doing. And hope to see you guys with a few takedowns. What was Hideki's ownership projection? So I can't give you the exact number. I do have to keep that behind the paywall, but I will say that in that range, he's one of the higher owned players that I have in that range. So he's not really a leverage piece. You finished in 23rd in the $100 single entry with Sergio and Showdown. Wow, dude. Yeah. If you have anyone else there, you're probably closer to that top 10. So yeah, I feel you out there with that tilt. Kawa with Reed tomorrow, that little flower will wilt. Yeah, it couldn't have happened to a better person, huh? Out there with Morikawa. You'll love to see that. They're starting at 9:50 Eastern. Okay, so I get to sleep in a little bit. That's good to know. Good Lord. Starting at 7:30 was a little bit early for me the last few days. Stay out of that $250 you're warning me. I don't know. That sounds like a good time, man. You're warning me with a good time. I don't know if I can hold back on that one. Do I play underdog at all? I will occasionally, but it's not the main thing I do. It's mostly over here on DraftKings. Going to catch up later on, but Luke, you steamed up McCarty for today. I did, but he was the absolute nuts, so I hope you played him, even with that sort of steam. But yeah, see you later on, Goku. And by the way, you are the earliest man for every live stream. It is just incredible. What's your boy Hoagie looking like for tomorrow? Yeah, yesterday he had that weird stat profile, right, where he gained like 4 putting and then lost like 3 strokes around the green, or maybe it was the other way around. Today, gained nearly 3 strokes approach and then lost with the putter. This is a really nice stat profile. Now, I wish he was better off the tee, but we're not ever going to have a perfect stat profile on these sort of players. But like the iron profile is exactly what we want. And then, a little bit of putting regression that he might be able to get over there for tomorrow. So Tom Hoagie might be a player I need to add to my player pool. And of course, Michael, best of luck out there with your exposure. That's all I've got, guys, out here for the round 3 stream. Make sure to tune on back out there for the round 4 stream tomorrow night. And of course, over there for the prop and betting preview over there on my channel a little bit later on.